Welcome to Wholly Fractional, the podcast dedicated to elevating the role and success of fractional workers everywhere. I am your host, Andrew Graft. Wholly Fractional, the future of work starts here, and it starts now. Welcome to the Wholly Fractional podcast, everyone. I'm Andrew Graft here with my behind-the-scenes producer and baby-faced media maven, Todd Hines. Today on Wholly Fractional, we're going to talk about an issue that is rapidly descending upon working-age Americans everywhere, many of whom don't even see it coming. But take it from me, I promise, chances are good it'll be coming to a household near you sooner or later, and now's a good time to get ready. To help us lead in that discussion, it gives me great pleasure to welcome one of planet Earth's top-ranking human beings. I am referring, of course, to the State Director for AARP Utah and my best friend for over 40 years, Alan Ormsby. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for that great introduction. And yes, I've known Andrew for 40 plus years, and we've been through it all together. So this is wonderful. I'm
at least
excited.
10 to 15 of them were happy years. So absolutely, and I don't know where we are now, but you know what? We'll take the temperature after the show and see how it goes. Okay, so again, seriously, thank you for coming. Anyone who knows me or has followed along with me during this whole fractional journey that I've been on, you already know that the driving force behind why I chose to leave corporate America was in favor of, well, basically being there to help with the aging of my own parents. I'm a member of Gen X. My parents, my wife's parents, they're all in their mid-80s now. And just last year, right before I made the decision to leave corporate America, my mom was diagnosed with a pretty serious heart condition. And it was something that needed someone to advocate for her within what is a very complex healthcare system in America. And it was at that time that I realized very clearly that my family is a lot more important to me than chasing a few extra dollars that I don't need. And I was lucky to be in a place where I could make that kind of a career change and that kind of a life change. And I recognize that not everyone is. I know a lot of the people in our audience are making their way in solopreneur world, and this is just potentially one more area of stress that could be either happening with you right now or on the horizon. But where I was incredibly lucky wasn't just that, I was in a position where I could stop working full time. I was incredibly lucky that my closest friend has indeed spent most of his life advocating for the needs of aging adults, whether that was as an attorney, as a government official, now at AARP. And I wish everyone had a friend like Alan to help them navigate aging-related issues like he did for me. But since cloning is not yet legal, today is where we're going to have to start. So again, very good to have you here, Alan.
Yeah. It's interesting, as you were talking about that, one of the things that I thought of is kind of a bumper sticker that is aging, if it's not your issue, it will be. It'll affect all of us, right? And we are in that generation that they sometimes call the sandwich generation, where we're thinking about taking care of our families and our spouses and also our aging parents. And yeah, it's a very big shift in kind of thinking. And if you haven't started this journey, if you haven't been a caregiver, chances are very good you will be. You may not be the primary caregiver. You may not even identify as a caregiver, but I hope you will. I hope you'll figure out, every time I go to my mom's house and she has me be that tech support, or she has me change a light bulb, or I worry about her getting on a ladder, or whatever it happens to be, you are a caregiver, and identify yourself as such, because this caregiving journey is really, really rewarding, as well as being challenging.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the subject today, admittedly, is bigger and thornier than we could ever possibly cover in a single podcast episode. But as we've talked about, I think it's a good idea to start the conversation and get people thinking about it, or have solutions available if they're going through it now. But before we dig into that topic, Alan, I just want to talk a little bit about you first, and your background. Your connection to issues that older Americans face goes way back before AARP, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. I think my caregiving and understanding of older adults really started with my relationship with my grandpa. He was the main male role model in my life, a wonderful man, intelligent, charming, warm, incredibly friendly, and he got scammed bad. And it was really, really hard. Towards the end of his life, he had some really difficult times, and it was being defrauded that really brought me from my former career, which was in the law. And I loved working on healthcare policy and healthcare law. And it really kind of changed my focus to how do I make sure that the older people in my life, the people that I care about the most, aren't hurt by a world that either ignores their needs or sometimes is absolutely antithetical to their financial situations. And so that really is the thing that changed me. So I've been working actually on aging issues since about 2000 ish. I started working in my legal career on Medicare, Medicaid, uh, skilled nursing facilities, those kinds of things. And then around 2002, 2003 is when we found out that my grandpa got scammed out of a lot of money. And so I started working on his case as an attorney. And that eventually led me back to Utah, where I worked for state government as the director of the Division of Aging and Adult Services, and then went on to serve as the director of the Division of Services for People with Disabilities. So, vulnerable people has really always been my focus, and it's kind of where my heart lies. I feel like justice is such an important thing, and I want to make sure that those people who frequently don't get the justice that they deserve get that. And if I can be a part of that by pushing policies in the right direction, it's exactly what I want to do with my career.
Yeah, I can attest 100%. Speaking as a kid who listened to Alan talk about his grandpa a lot, and then discovering in our early adulthood that age related issues really contributed to him being, taken advantage of. I know that had a significant impact on Alan, where he decided to really focus the rest of his life. For the two or three listeners in our audience that don't already know the answer to this, what is this AARP thing?
Well, a lot of your listeners are probably getting that magic envelope when they turn 50 and saying, I'm way too young to be a part of AARP. I probably hear that more often than just about anything. You guys found me at 50 and I don't know what's going on. So AARP is really just it's an incredible organization for advocating for the needs of older adults. The vision of the organization is to really ensure that people have the ability to age with the dignity and what they want in life. And that's what AARP goes about to do. I work for the side of AARP that is the outreach, education, and advocacy side of things. So I don't do anything with like the insurance products or any of the for-profit stuff. I'm part of the nonprofit that is literally our mission. We are a 501c4, which is a social change organization. We want to change the world.
So, I mean, AARP is a national organization. You must live in Washington D.C., right?
Yeah, AARP has state offices in all 50 states plus three territories. We've got just a small team of paid staff, but we've got a huge team of volunteers. We've got about 5 staff that are full time paid, and we've got over 300 full-time, well, I shouldn't say full-time, over 300 volunteers, many of whom look like full-time volunteers because they're spending their time doing tax aid and helping with driver safety and ensuring that up at the legislature there's adequate representation of older people. So yeah, a big volunteer group in every single state and 3 territories.
Yeah, that for me is what I'm always, I mean, frankly, amazed by. I mean, unless you're hips deep in helping, the aging individuals in your life, you often don't notice what's going on in the background as it relates to what AARP is doing within their local communities. I know I used to think of AARP as truly national, and they work at the, they talk to Congress and the Senate and all of that, and they work to change national policy. But the reality is the real work and the real magic and heavy lifting is taking place at the state level. And the reason being that state laws are more complicated and require more boots on the ground, even if all you do is advocacy. And Alan, I know you give some example of the local advocacy outside of just help, everyday help. What are some of the legal advocacy kinds of work you do?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of just the last legislative session. There was an effort to try and Utah is one of 9 states that still charges a state tax for Social Security income. We have worked at AARP to try and eliminate that state tax on Social Security income for about 10 years. And we've made huge progress. We're not quite there yet. But this is one of those things that our members tell us it is a really, really big deal. I've paid taxes on this once, and I don't want to have to pay taxes on it twice. And so it's a very sensible kind of thing. And as you said, at the state level, at even the local level, at the municipality level, there's so many things that impact older adults and their lives that aren't necessarily being addressed and couldn't be addressed by a federal kind of advocacy. So we get to do that in the state of Utah. And in addition to the advocacy things, we also do outreach and education. I'm going to be doing a presentation on wills and trusts in just a couple of weeks. And those are the kinds of things that I feel incredibly blessed to do.
And I've got to say, the advocacy, if anything gets the press, it's the advocacy. But in my own personal opinion, one of the very most important reasons for existence for AARP and the greatest benefit it provides to people like myself are the educational resources that it has put so many dollars toward developing for not just aging Americans, but for the caregivers themselves. In fact, I was going to make a joke. I was going to be like, hey, Alan, this is only an issue that senior citizens face, right? I mean, we don't need to think about this whole issue until we're in our 60s or 70s. Someone like me, I've never had to think about this, right?
Yeah, that is so true. And, people sometimes don't think about any kind of aging issues until they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s. And I would just encourage anybody can become a member of AARP, even though we focus our efforts on people 50 plus. I would encourage anybody to really think through who are the people that I care most about in my life, and what are the skills and the educational needs. What do I need to be able to help them and myself with this incredibly complex world? And AARP can be a part of that. We're not the only part of it, and I would absolutely encourage. We'll talk about resources. I would encourage a broad-based understanding of what the resources are out there to help older people, because there's lots of them. But AARP can be one piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I mean, speaking firsthand, caregiving does affect me, first person, and it affects, and as a result, I can see how it really does affect everyone. If you have someone you love and they're getting up in years, it has the potential to affect you one way or the other. And I wanted to ask, people talk a lot about demographics. Just so people have a sense of not just the scope of the typical everyday problem. Why is this problem getting more and more critical and becoming more of an issue for really all Americans?
Yeah, I think most people understand that the baby boom generation is a huge generation. And the generation that came behind it, Generation X, is a very small generation comparatively. The millennials that are coming behind Generation X, they're about the same size as the baby boom, but they are considerably younger than those baby boomers. And the folks who are in the kind of prime need to take care of the baby boomers, that's Generation X. So we've got this huge generation that is now in the place where they kind of need help and they need services. And Generation X is this very small generation that isn't really capable of providing those kinds of services. So, we all see the huge problems with labor shortages. That's just going to get worse as baby boomers require more and more help. That's going to pull on the millennials and Gen Z and even Gen Alpha. And they are going to be the ones who will have to step up into those gaps. And it'll really change the way that the overall economy works because people will have significant needs. There won't be enough labor to meet those needs. Costs will go up. And sadly, some people will just not ever get the services that they need.
It's so interesting. I mean, when we were growing up, taking care of grandparents and the elderly was just part of the system, and I mean, it didn't feel very different. But today, those demographics, they make a meaningful difference in how we as a culture and a society are able to make bandwidth to help people. So where that's relevant for this audience, clearly, if 30, 40 years ago, you thought it wasn't a big deal because around every corner there was some organization, some community organization who could provide help and services, the extent of those services have not grown remotely close to the need that has grown over the last 20 years. So let's dig in now. Let's talk about what some of the top challenges that not just older adults, but really the children of older adults, the people who are listening. What are some of the biggest challenges you see that our cohort faces and needs to be thinking about?
Yeah, for me, the most obvious one is just identifying as a caregiver and identifying what caregivers do and what the needs are for those caregivers and trying to do some planning and thinking about that before things become a crisis. That to me is the biggest issue is what do I need to be thinking about and doing before my older adult, the person that I love, my spouse, starts getting into those really significant needs, and then all of a sudden you're in crisis. And in that crisis, it becomes really, really hard to focus in on, excuse me, when you're in that crisis, it becomes really hard to focus in on the things that need to be done because you're just barely treading water. And so, the idea when you're barely treading water that somebody from the hospital system comes to you and says, okay, who's the decision maker for healthcare needs for this person? And you're in crisis mode at that point and you say, I have no idea. What did that person want? What was the steps towards dignity that person really wanted? I have no idea. But if you can do some thinking in advance and get to that point where you really do understand what that person's needs and wants are, then it's a much smoother delivery of those kinds of services, that kind of assistance. There isn't a family crisis now where you've got two people in the family, the loudest person and the person that, mom probably identified as the person that they wanted, just at loggerheads with each other now fighting. That's what you want to try and avoid.
And when people take on caregiving responsibilities, one of the things we talk about the more involved with caregiving that you are, there's always this risk of burnout. And I would imagine that for anyone in our audience who is trying to build a business, which is already doing the work and doing the business development and doing the books, and now if this falls on you, this can feel kind of overwhelming. Have I at least painted the picture somewhat accurately?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You and I talked about, several months ago. I asked the question, because you were working now in this fractional field, how many people in this fractional field are in it because of caregiving issues? And I think you threw some polling out there just kind of informally to ask. And as I recall, it was 9 out of 12 people who responded
Yeah.
said, I'm in this fractional world partially because I have caregiving responsibilities and caregiving duties. I think that's indicative and it's really important and powerful. Um, all of us who are professionals and who want to make a difference in the world, one of the things that we have to confront is that caregiving journey. The various things that pull at our needs and pull at our threads and say, hey, I've got to be doing X or Y today. One of the biggest and most compelling is really our caregiving.
That's right. And there are it's a huge challenge, and like we'll talk about, there are resources to help with it. But there are plenty of people who find themselves not knowing what the next step is. What about a situation like mine? There's kind of a specific issue related to the healthcare system. I mean, people get older, they need more healthcare services, but I can vouch for the fact that it's not always as straightforward as you hope. I had to do a lot of advocating on behalf of my mom to help her get the services that she needed. What, if anything, do you wish that any child of an aging parent knew or knows about the system and the pitfalls they can fall into? What's some guidance you can give there?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is just know that it is complicated. You're not going to come across simple solutions typically. You're going to have to fight and advocate. And, you know, the system is not designed for caregivers to step in. You really have to have the permission of the older adult, the permission of the doctor. You've got to be kind of I don't want to say a gadfly, not to that point, but you really do have to have a willingness to step up with a little bit of a spine and say, I'm not sure that that's right. I'm not sure that my mom is understanding this. I'm not sure that we're on the best pathway possible for what her needs and desires are. So I think you've got to just come at it with, this is going to be hard, and I'm going to have to sometimes be obnoxious. I'm going to have to sometimes push to get the things done that need to be done, and it's not going to be fun and friendly all the time.
Well, the crazy thing is, it's easy to sit back. It's not that these systems are meant to be adversarial in any way. It's just that they're set up for their own efficiencies. That's why when you, as a family member, that's where you have to have your parents back. And it's hard sometimes because they're the ones who've been giving you all the support your whole life. You're not used to having to think along those lines. But I can promise you, there are going to be some times in a hospital room where your feelings it doesn't feel quite right, and you can see the look on your parents' face, it doesn't look quite right, but hey, the doctor and the nurse or whomever, they're just continuing right along. You need to be willing to ask questions. It's not a burden on you or burden for you to be asking questions. That is probably the most important role you can play, is to let people know you're a presence. And if you want to talk about accountability, we talk about that a lot in business and leadership. They're accountable to you and to your family. So don't be afraid of it. Just know that's a role that you can take, and it's okay.
Yeah, I love what you said about it not being designed to be adversarial. It's not. No doctor wants to do the wrong thing. No nurse wants to harm your loved one. But communication is already the hardest thing in the world, right? We know that. And communicating in very high stress situations is already fraught. And so I think it's just a mental understanding that in these fraught kind of conversations, you are going to have a spine. You're going to have to be that person who, when mom's coming out of anesthesia, she's not going to be at her strongest. And yet they're going to hand her a packet of 200 things to do after you get out of the hospital. You have to be that person who is there to interpret that, understand it, and then assist as needed.
And that's okay. I officially give all of you permission to do exactly that. I know it's like, wait, mom and dad don't want me to do this. No, they're happy to have the help. You just communication good, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about something. Let's talk about household safety for a minute. I know that's not something that people think a lot about, but if you have a loved one in your life and they're older, what talk a little bit about why that's such an important area to start getting into your mind.
Yeah. Well, we know that falls are typically the beginning of the end, and it's a very sad fact. I can
Is that
speak
really
to it.
true?
It's absolutely true.
It's funny
Yeah.
until you and I started talking about this, I didn't realize that falls are quite possibly the most dangerous, deadly, high impact accident that can happen, and that's what puts our older loved ones at risk. Talk about that. I think this is fascinating.
Yeah. So frequently when people fall, first of all, it's generally a more violent thing than people recognize. When you're older, you're not quite as fast at putting your hands up. You're not quite as springy as you used to be. Maybe you're heavier. Regardless of how your fall happens, if you think about, a 6 foot tall person, their head is moving from 6 feet down to 0 feet. That's a long way to fall. And people tend to get very injured as older people when they fall. Um, Brain injuries almost always occur when someone falls. Concussions occur, and yet when a person falls, they don't always say, "Oh, I got to go to the hospital. A concussion protocol needs to be put in place. I've got to take care of my brain." No, we just think, "Oh, stupid me! I tripped. I fell." Right? But that tends to be one of the more uh, dramatic things that happens to older people. They suffer a fall. Once they have fallen, then various health problems kind of start to creep in. And so being aware of that environment, tripping hazards like a throw rug, or not having grab bars as you go in and out of the shower, not having a handrail as you walk up and down your steps, walking out in a icy morning and forgetting that there might very well be ice on your driveway. Those are the kinds of things that, as a caregiver, we can be really cognizant of that and help our older adult and say, "Oh, do you need grab bars? Let me walk around your house with you for a minute and just see how you function. Are you tripping on, the threshold between the kitchen and the living room because there happens to be a half-inch gap between those things?" You can just kind of identify and walk around. And these are hard conversations. I'm making it sound really simple. Um, know that the person who you love is probably going to resist and say, "I don't need any help with that kind of stuff. Why are you treating me like this?" But you need to have that courage to say, "Hey, mom, I want to just be sure that you're safe when I'm not around. Let's take a look at that kind of thing." My mom struggled for years. She loves decorating for Christmas, and she would consistently get up on a ladder and try and put things up. And finally, about 4 or 5 years ago, we just said, hey, can we do this for you? And she was really grateful to have the help. I don't think if I had called her and said, Mom, are you struggling with your ornamentation at Christmas? She'd, no, 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 no. But to observe that and see, oh, this is a problem, and I actually can come forward with a solution. I think many older people are very eager to have the solutions, and willing to do what needs to be done. But boy, if you ask them, are you in trouble with this? Are you having a hard time? Yeah, they're never going to say yes.
And along these lines, I know we're going to talk solutions, whether we talk about this one or not, but I want to drop in here and say AARP has some fantastic resources around how to talk about these issues with your older adult. Unlike anything you'll find out there, they've been there. They know these conversations. So if you need help along those lines, you can get it. I can tell you one of the things that really helped me with my parents. Fortunately, as everyone knows, I'm very close with my family, and and I from early on, I've tried to be as honest about my concerns for them as possible. Not that they aren't capable, not that they are anything other than the amazing human beings that they are. But what is absolutely fair is, hey, when people get older, they don't bounce back as hard, or they don't bounce back as fast. Or, hey, there are other risks out there that I want to help make sure you aren't sideswiped by, you're not blindsided by. And by the time that dialogue was done, my mom and my dad, they know when I bring up stuff like this, I'm thinking about the big picture for the whole family. It's not a judgment of them. It's, hey, the whole family, my brother and I, the whole family will be impacted by these things. So we're just going to work together as a team on this. Again, that's my parents. I'm fortunate, but that's one way that's worked really well for me. Talk about the subject of fraud, because this one I know is a huge issue, and
Yeah.
and unfortunately people don't come to the caregiver first. They target the older adult.
Yeah, fraud is something that we deal with at AARP day in, day out. I probably spend about 10 or 15% of my overall outreach time educating and talking with people about the most current frauds, why people get targeted, how they get targeted, what red flags to avoid. So let me just start with kind of the basics. The first thing is fraudsters are everywhere. And that's something that we all need to be really, really cognizant of. If you own a phone, if you have an email, if you have texting, almost always, day in, day out, you're going to get hit with sometimes dozens of frauds that are coming across. The FBI just recently put out some information about how many total phone calls are fraudulent phone calls. And if I recall, it's over 50% now of all of the calls that are generated are AI, they're bots, they're phishing for information. So more than half of the phone calls that anybody is going to get are
Not just older adult, all of us.
all of us. Yeah. If you don't have protections on your phone already that say scam likely or whatever it happens to be, we don't use our phones that much for communication. We text each other, those kinds of things. So if you're getting a phone call that's coming from a business or what looks like a business or what maybe looks like the IRS or whatever it is, chances are more than 50% that that is a scam call or a call that is trying to solicit you for something. So we tell people at AARP, and you may laugh about this, we just tell people don't ever answer the phone. Don't ever answer the phone and let it go to voicemail. If it's important, the person will leave a voicemail and then you call them back. Even if it looks like a really important call. And I'll give you an example from my life. My mom got a call from what she thought was the West Valley City Police Department, and it showed up on her caller ID as West Valley City Police. And this person in a very thick accent started saying, "Oh, well, your son is in real trouble. He's a doctor. He prescribed things that he shouldn't have, and now he's in real trouble, and you're going to have to, step up with some money to help make sure that he doesn't go to jail. She started kind of going, well, wait a minute, man, this doesn't sound right to me. Even though the number is coming from West Valley City Police, this person doesn't sound like a police officer. I don't think my son is in trouble. So she kind of pulled the plug a little bit. She recognized the red flags and said, okay, this is bad. That is the kind of thing, though, that if you answer the phone, chances are very good you then go up on a list that you are a live person who is willing to answer the phone. And so you're going to get more and more of these kinds of scammy calls. So again, let it go to voicemail. I doubt very much if that scammer who pretended to be the West Valley City Police, if it just went to voicemail, would he leave my mom a voicemail? No, probably not. But what he's hoping is to cause that fear, cause that sensation of anxiety where we start to then make really bad choices.
I'll weigh in on that even one further. First of all, I don't have this backed up with data, and Alan, maybe you can confirm it, yes or no, but I have a sense that whatever we individuals as, 30, 40, 50 years old are getting in terms of scam calls, if you're older, multiply that by some factor, because they're using data to say they are the vulnerable. It's not just random. They're not just going after you and me as well as my parents. They've got my parents and your parents in their sights through demographics. Is that at least a fair statement?
I think that's an incredibly fair statement. We have heard AARP has done some research on how scammers make their money. And one of the most lucrative thing that they do is they sell their lists to other scammers, right? So if you're dialing out to 1,000 different phone numbers, and let's say 100 of them respond, what are the most valuable phone numbers? It's those 100 that respond, right? And then further with data, if those people will respond and stay on the call for a minute or whatever it happens to be, they then get elevated up and up and up. And that's one of the reasons we tell people, just don't ever answer the phone. Let it go to voicemail. You call them rather than they call you. And if somebody does leave a phone message, by the way, and they say, call this 800 number, one of the most frequent scams that we're hearing about now are package scams. This is Alan from Amazon, and we tried to deliver your package, and your package wasn't being able to deliver. Call me at 1-800 blah-bitty-blah. Well, that 1-800 blah-bitty-blah is not Amazon's number. It's a scam number. So if you get a voicemail, stop for a minute, go online, figure out what Amazon's real number is, and call that and try and verify the data. And you're going to find that data is not verifiable because it's not really Amazon calling you. It's some scammer who wants to get information from you.
Let me take even one layer more complicated. My dad fell victim to this. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out anything bad, but so he would get he gets texts from people who clearly are not, real. And he likes to play with them, right? He thinks it's funny to text back and write. And, well, without realizing it, he was telling him about our family dog and his name, right? What's the big deal? Well, these scammers know that very often the names of our pets are what appear in passwords. It is insidious. I mean, calling on behalf of the police, well, hey, any one of us can say that doesn't sound right. But then there are the things we don't even see that the scammers have figured out long before we see it. So I guess the point is there's a lot of work that's worth doing and support you can provide the older people in your life to help them with that. So, at this point, it's easy to kind of sit back, take a breath, and be like, this is a lot. I mean, hopefully if people have gotten nothing else from this, we've just scratched the surface on the kinds of things that a family member, a caregiver has to be thinking about. And this is in, competition with all the other complexities of life entirely outside of this. So when you hear that, it's easy to say to yourself, it's too much. I've got cognitive dissonance. I guess I'm just going to block it all out because I don't even know where to start,
Yeah.
right? Let's talk about that path. If let's assume people in our audience are saying, I want to do something, but I'm not sure where to go. What are some first steps, and where can they go, and who can they talk to?
Yeah. The first thing that I would do is it goes back to that idea of recognizing I'm a caregiver and I'm in a caregiving role now. I think first steps include figuring out who your team will be. Is it your family members? Is it family and neighbors? Is it neighbors? Is it this person's social circles, their church? You've got to figure out who those caregivers are that you can kind of surround yourself with, and figure out who's got talents where. Are there people who are really good cooks and are willing to provide a meal once a week or whatever it happens to be? Um, Figuring out what those needs are, and there's a lot of really good guides that can help people figure out these conversations. AARP has a number of those guides for how to communicate how to pull together a team and figure out what the needs are. The Alzheimer's Association has that. A great resource that hardly anybody knows about, but your tax dollars are paying for, is the area agencies on aging. They're often called the triple A's, but this is not the triple A's that come and change your tire.
Right.
No, this is the area agencies on aging, and it's a government program that is in every county in the entire United States is covered by an area agency on aging. And these are folks who are experts in aging. They can do in-person kinds of assessments. They can figure out they're essentially the Meals on Wheels people,
Mm.
but they do so much more than Meals on Wheels. But that's kind of, if nothing else, walking away from this podcast, you take from it, know that there are governmental agencies like the Area Agency on Aging in your area that will absolutely help you figure out from top to bottom how to go about this journey.
Will they'll meet with you? They'll literally sit, I mean, will they charge you anything
No,
to come up with plans or any of that stuff?
no, these are your tax dollars at work. They may or may not have all the resources in the world to be able to help you, but at very least, they can talk you through the challenges and problems, and they can point you in the right direction. They can say, hey, in our area, we have this senior center, and this senior center does X, Y, and Z. And those are resources that you may or may not know about, but they can always point you in those directions to help you figure out what your next steps happen to be. And your next steps, it's really, it's hard to think about, but it's absolutely true that everything that's happening today can change dramatically tomorrow. If your loved one has a fall, if your loved one has a heart attack or has a stroke, or lots of those kind of God forbid things, you've just gone from, I help my mom with her yard work and I help make sure that at Christmas time she doesn't fall off a ladder, to now she needs daily transportation. Now she needs Meals on Wheels coming in. Now she needs someone to come and help her shower. Those kinds of things happen very, very suddenly. And so it's organizations like the area agencies on aging that can help you when those things progress. They're there to help you take the next steps. AARP is in the same kind of role where, the information that you need today, we can help you with that. But the information you need tomorrow, when things get much more serious, we can help with that too.
That that for me may be, to your point, one of the biggest takeaways because it's easy to get overwhelmed in these details. But knowing that there are a handful of organizations, some that are hyper local to you, that's what they do, and they'll do it. They won't do the work, but they'll help you plan for free. You are not alone in this journey, because it can feel that way, especially if you're an only child, right? Or you're the last living relative. It can feel overwhelming. There are people out there whose entire professional lives revolve around helping people like you.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up our conversation today, I wanted to ask you, and it's related to this last point. If someone in our audience who is listening really needs help, Alan, they're overwhelmed, they don't know what to do. I know one option: reach out to the area agency on aging. They could reach out to their AARP state office, right?
Absolutely.
And I guess the point I'm getting to is you've been very gracious in my conversations to say, well, and if people need to start somewhere, you're taking calls and emails.
Absolutely. I mean, my email address is aormsby@aarp.org. I'm more than happy to help somebody, and you don't have to live in Utah. I will more than happily make a 15-minute carve out in my life to say, what do you need? How can I help you? But yeah, there's literally dozens of people that I can think of in the state of Utah who are committed to this kind of work, and that's what they do day in, day out. That when they hear that there is someone in need, they are willing to say, where can I help? Like I say, I'm not going to come to your house and help your loved one get in and out of a tub. I mean, I'm not skilled at that. But do you need that? I can help you figure out where to go and who to talk to that can help you with that kind of need. So
do I need to have my membership number ready when I place that call, like my AARP membership?
No, what we do for all. That's one of the things that AARP is kind of famous for. No, I will not care one iota if you're an AARP member. If you're not an AARP member, I'm more than happy to help anybody who needs this kind of help.
Well, to anyone who knows me and knows Alan, knows this is the most obvious statement in the world, but you're a good man, Alan. I aspire to the level of goodness you bring to the world.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very, very kind. But honestly, it's really my pleasure. And I think if there is anything that I could convey to somebody who's listening who is struggling, it's that there is joy in this journey as well. It's hard. We know that. But those opportunities to really get close to somebody in a very different way, right? You know, we are accustomed to our parents parenting us, and suddenly in a changing role, we're going to have to step into that more parenting role, and that can be really hard. These conversations are not easy conversations, but they're incredibly rewarding. And when you are able to really put your stamp on someone else's life in a really positive way, it's beautiful. That's a really cool thing. And the caregiving journey is tough, but it can be incredibly beautiful as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to let that be the last word on it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of another edition of Wholly Fractional. I want to thank our guest, Alan Ormsby, for appearing on the show today. And I also want to thank the world's best podcast producer and my partner in part-time, Todd Hines, for making this journey with me. Finally, as always, a big thanks to our listeners for joining us today. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, stay fractional.